to have prevented that from happening? And in the future, what would you do to A, make sure something like that would not happen, and B, if it did happen, how would you handle it?
Let's start at the other end with Reverend Salgado.
The question goes to me first, huh? First of all, at least I got one first. Thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate it. Asi say hi, by the way. First of all, I think we cannot take sides when it comes with races. We have to make sure that we don't serve as an instigator, and we don't seek for an opportunity, like with this case from Florida, which I believe that they use it and many people exploit it to divide our community and not to state for the fact of what he did wrong by seeking this young fellow. When I saw in the newspaper calling Mr. Silverman as a white Hispanic, I was shocked, because in the census they asked me if I am a non-Hispanic white, which I find very offensive as well. So sometimes I don't understand how some people try to take advantage of certain situations when the leaders are supposed to go to the fact and try to unite our community and not divide them, using any of this sensitive matter as an opportunity to make a political issue, like some of my colleagues are actually doing over here. We have to unite our community, and by no way, especially when a tragedy happens, we cannot politicize this kind of behavior. We have to stay and stick for the fact. When I heard some of my colleagues mention this case from Florida, this doesn't unite our community. They actually divide our community, and this could open up to another incident like what happened in Crown High in those days, which were difficult days for all New Yorkers. I don't believe none of the New Yorkers, regardless of the race, want to encounter a situation where one community is fighting against another.
Rabbi,
If a riot breaks out, then there's been a failure of those politicians. We have to start way earlier. We have to step back and say, why do we not have equal access across all 5 boroughs to the kind of economic opportunity and educational opportunity that some of us have? And my plan calls for bringing economic opportunity, the ability to start businesses, to start small businesses, to do microfinance, these kinds of activities to all 5 boroughs. It's absolutely critical we do that. If we don't have that, we're going to end up in situations like that. So it has to start right at the beginning, to make sure that people have access to say, I can start these companies. I can help my family. I can supplement income. I can do that just as the community next to me can. We're blessed. We're blessed in the city with so many cultures, so much diversity. We need to bring that together, not to divide ourselves. And this is the opportunity that I will bring as mayor to the city, to make sure that places near Coney Island, near Gravesend, where I grew up, have the same opportunity as Midtown Manhattan, downtown Manhattan. That places in the Bronx, in Queens, in Staten Island, in Washington Heights, have those same opportunities. This is absolutely critical. You have to take that as priority number 1, or we're going to have the kind of situations we had in the past. It's really time to move forward and not to the past failed policies of career politicians. Thank you.
Well, let me reframe the question if I could. You know, Crown Heights isn't going to happen today. We're so much a better city. We're so much a less tense city. I think this is a good final question to close on, how fortunate we are to live in a city like New York. You know, the types of tensions that emerge elsewhere, maybe it's because we all bounce off each other like molecules in a microwave every single day. And we have plenty of chances. We yell at each other, we jab each other, but we never boil over because we understand so much of our existence is tied up in one another's success. You know, this is a museum, this is an institute dedicated to that notion, and think about how far we are from that day 22 years ago. And how much credit I think the police department deserves, how much credit I think Mayor Bloomberg deserves. Look at the diversity of this group up on this stage today. We're not going back in that direction, but we also can't govern with the fear that we do. You know, this notion that, oh, we've got to be frightened of voting for A, B, or C because we're going to go back. No. We are a much better community now because more community members are taking ownership and control of their neighborhoods. Police officers, the police force is much more diverse than it was. And we understand this notion that we are not tribes. You know, I have some concern about language in this campaign, about how many cities we are. We're one city, we're united by an ideal, and that we want to leave a city a little better than the one we found. That's something that unifies us throughout cultures, and we have to keep that in mind. And we have to look at Crown Heights as a dark day in our city, but one that's so far behind us because of the work the people in this room did.
I was deputy borough president in Brooklyn during the Crown Heights riots. I remember vividly being probably on the first vacation, the first real vacation I had had. I was out of the country. I remember coming back to my hotel late in the evening, and there were, I think, 4 messages from, at that point, Borough President Howard Golden to call the office. I called the office, and his comment at that point is, Crown Heights is burning. And I hopped on a plane and came back to New York. One of the first things I did, I remember, along with the borough president, going to the Gavin Cato funeral. It was one of the first things I did in getting back to the city. It was a dark day in the city's history, but if you look at Crown Heights today, Crown Heights is a different neighborhood. And I see people here, I see Kanina, who's here from Crown Heights. Crown Heights is a different neighborhood. It is because the residents of Crown Heights, on all sides, sat down at a table and talked and discussed and talked about their differences. And we are here talking about tolerance. It was, and in the opening question, it was through tolerance, understanding, respect. You look at Crown Heights now, it is a different neighborhood. And if you look across the city of New York, many neighborhoods are different than they were 20 years ago. Because that's Crown Heights, that was, as a matter of fact, over 20 years ago. New York has changed dramatically. In one of the earlier comments, someone talked about a different New York. And some credit was given to Mike Bloomberg, and I will say, and give him some credit for that, at least as he became mayor. But we were also a different city after September 11th, when we realized that we are all New Yorkers, and that could have been any of us in the World Trade Center. A different city. So you look at Crown Heights, you look at so many other neighborhoods, we're a city that understands each other more, a city that talks about its differences more, a city that is more tolerant and more understanding. We are not going to have Crown Heights again. We are a different city.
Thank you, Mr. Little.
I think we are a different city, but we should not rest on our laurels here. We should not get too comfortable. And my quick answer to you is that what happened 20 years ago, I think the most basic thing was that leadership did not show up in time. The police was sent in a show of force, but leadership did not arrive. So we should not allow that to happen. That's what I say that's what I mean when I say we should not get too comfortable with ourselves here. Because Bill is right, it is a different city. But we changed after Crown Heights, but we changed once again after September 11th. And to this day, 12 years later, we still have some unease with ourselves in confronting some of the basic intolerances that continue to exist in this city. And one clear example, this is an unpopular thing to talk about based on the public opinion polls. Most New Yorkers think that it's okay for the police to spy on people just because they're Muslim. People think it's okay. Now, look, I'm not Muslim. I can't claim to be Muslim, but I think it's absolutely not okay. It's not only unconstitutional, I think it's unconscionable.
Thank you.
People should not think that, okay, we are in the war against terrorism. No question about that. But let's not relax our basic fundamental values here. Let's not forget what this country is about. And if there are still some people who excuse the police spying on people for no reason other than the Muslim. Not because of their background, not because of what they've done in the past, not because of their job, but because they happen to be Muslim. And they get spied upon in schools, in mosques, on the streets, in community centers, everywhere. And the police are still being excused for this, even though 6 years of this have resulted not in 100 leads, not even 50 leads, not a dozen leads, not a single lead after 6 years of this spying program of people for no reason other than the fact that they're Muslim. It can't happen. So I wouldn't get too comfortable here in this place of tolerance. Let's go back to our fundamental values and let's make sure that we remember who we are.
On this issue, I agree with what my friend Bill Thompson said, Rabbi. I think that the city was late in responding And I think that there wasn't the dialogue in the community between the various